So let me ask you something. You're scrolling through your bank account right now, and you see $847 sitting there. Your rent's due in 5 days. Your credit card payment is $120. And then, I don't know, your check engine light comes on. What do? If you felt your stomach drop just now, if you immediately started doing mental math about which bill you could maybe push back a week, or if you're thinking, I'd probably just put it on the credit card and deal with it later, this video is for you. Because that feeling, that constant low-level financial anxiety that follows you everywhere, it doesn't have to be your normal. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about why we're all so incredibly bad at building emergency funds. If you're someone who knows you, should have savings, who's tried to save before but something always comes up, who feels like you're working hard but never getting ahead, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing. We need to talk about emergency funds, but not in the way every other financial advice video talks about them. Because I'm going to tell you something that might make some personal finance people absolutely lose their minds. If you have $0 saved right now, trying to save 6 months of expenses is the worst advice anyone could give you. Look, I know what the traditional wisdom says. Save 3 to 6 months of expenses. Cool. Great. For most Americans, that's somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck right now, which according to a 2023 Lending Club report is about 60% of Americans, including people making six figures, telling you to save $20,000 might as well be telling you to save $1,000,000. It feels equally impossible. And here's what happens. You hear that number? You feel overwhelmed. You maybe try for a week or two. Something comes up. You spend it, and then you think, see, I'm just not good at saving. This isn't for people like me. But that's not true. The problem isn't you. The problem is that we're teaching emergency funds completely backwards. So here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to build your emergency fund in stages. And I'm going to show you why each stage creates a psychological shift that makes the next stage not just possible, but almost inevitable. Stage 1, the $500 buffer. Now you might be thinking, John, $500? That's not an emergency fund. That won't even cover most emergencies. And you're right, it won't. But here's what most people don't realize. The goal of Stage 1 isn't to cover every possible emergency. The goal is to break the cycle. Let me explain. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 report on economic well-being, 37% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money or selling something. Not $4,000. Not $400,000. $400. Here's what that looks like in real life. Your tire blows out. That's $150 to replace. Without savings, you put it on a credit card at 24% interest. You can't pay it off immediately, so now you're paying interest. Next month, your copay at the dentist is $75. Back to the credit card. Then your kid needs $40 for a field trip. Credit card. Before you know it, you've got $800 on your credit card that started as normal life expenses, and you're paying $16 a month just in interest. That's $192 a year just to have had normal expenses at the wrong time. This is the cycle. Small emergencies become debt. Debt creates stress. Stress makes it harder to think clearly about money. And the whole thing feeds on itself. The $500 buffer breaks that cycle for the first time in your life. Think about it this way. With $500 saved, maybe 70% of the unexpected expenses that come up, the blown tire, the urgent care visit, the broken phone screen. You can handle them without going into debt. And where it gets really interesting, that first time you have a $200 expense and you can just pay for it, that first time you don't have to juggle which bill to pay late, or beg for an extra shift, or hope your credit card doesn't get declined, that changes something in your brain. Because here's the thing about money that nobody talks about. It's not really about the math. I mean, yes, the math matters, but the reason most people can't build wealth isn't because they don't understand compound interest. It's because they've never felt what financial breathing room feels like. The $500 buffer is the first time you stop being in pure survival mode. It's the first time you can make a decision about money from a place of what's best instead of what's least terrible. And that psychological shift, that's what makes stage 2 possible. Stage 2, the $1,500 foundation. Okay, so you've got your $500 buffer. You've used it once or twice, you've replenished it, and you're starting to feel like maybe, just maybe, you're not completely terrible with money. Now we're going to triple it to $1,500. Here's why this number matters. According to data from the National Automotive Dealers Association, the average unexpected car repair in 2023 was around $1,400. Homeowners Insurance Institute puts the average home insurance deductible at $1,000 to $2,000. An urgent dental procedure? Easily $1,200 without insurance. At $1,500, you're now covering probably 90% of the true emergencies that can derail your finances. Not all of them. We'll get there. But most of them. But here's what's actually happening at this stage. You're building proof. Every month that you add $100 or $150 or $200 to this fund, you're proving to yourself that you can do this. You're not hoping you can save money. You're not wishing you were better with money. You have evidence that you can save money. Look, I've seen this happen hundreds of times. People who swore they just weren't savers suddenly have $1,500 in an account they're not touching. And something shifts. They start looking at their spending differently. Not from a place of shame, but from a place of power. Someone who has $1,500 saved starts asking different questions. Instead of, can I afford this? They start asking, do I want to afford this? That's a completely different calculation. Now you might be thinking, John, this all sounds great, but I literally cannot save $500 right now. I have $14 in my account, and my rent's due next week. I hear you. And I'm not going to give you some toxic positivity nonsense about how anyone can do anything if they just try hard enough. If you're barely covering your basic needs right now, we need to talk about increasing your income, not just cutting your spending. That's a different conversation. But here's what I will say. The Federal Reserve found that even among people living paycheck to paycheck, most have some variable expenses. Maybe it's the $40 a month on $40 streaming services you barely use. Maybe it's eating out 3 times instead of 4. Maybe it's skipping one night at the bar. For stage 1, we're talking about finding $50 to $100 a month. That's it. For most people, not all, but most, that's possible without making your life miserable. It might take you 6 months to hit $500. That's fine. The timeline doesn't matter. The habit does. Stage 3. The $3,000 confidence builder. All right, you're at $1,500. You've handled a few emergencies without panicking. You're starting to feel like a real adult. Now we're going to double it to $3,000. And this is where things get fun. Because $3,000 isn't just an emergency fund anymore. $3,000 is options. Here's what I mean. Let's say you hate your job. I mean, really hate it. Your boss is terrible, you're underpaid, and every Sunday night you feel physically sick thinking about Monday morning. With no savings, you're trapped. You need that paycheck. You can't risk looking for something better because what if there's a gap in employment? What if the new job doesn't work out? You can't afford to take that chance. But with $3,000, that's roughly 1 to 2 months of basic expenses for most people. That's enough to quit a toxic job and have a runway to find something better. That's enough to take an unpaid training course that could level up your career. That's enough to move to a cheaper apartment, even though you'll have overlap on rent for 1 month. This is what financial advisors mean when they talk about FU money. Now, $3,000 isn't full FU money. We'll get there. But it's I have options money. And that changes everything. There's actually research on this. A study from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found that people with even modest emergency savings report significantly lower stress levels, better sleep, and better performance at work than those without savings, even when controlling for income level. Translation: having $3,000 saved will literally make you better at your job, which makes it easier to earn more money, which makes it easier to save more money. It's a positive cycle, finally running in the right direction. Let's do some real math here, because I want you to see how powerful this progression actually is. Scenario 1. No emergency fund. Your transmission dies. That's $2,500. You don't have it, so you put it on a credit card at 22% interest. You can afford to pay $200 a month. It takes you 14 months to pay off, and you end up paying $352 in interest. That $1,500 repair actually cost you $2,852. Scenario 2. You have $3,000 saved. Same situation. You pay the $10,500 from savings. Yes, your emergency fund takes a hit, but now you're rebuilding from $500 instead of building while also paying interest on debt. You're back to $3,000 in probably 10-12 months, and you paid $0 in interest. The math isn't complicated. Emergency funds save you money, but more importantly, they save you stress, sleep, and sanity. Stage 4. 1 month of expenses. $4,000, $6,000. This is where we transition from emergency buffer to true emergency fund. 1 month of expenses means if something catastrophic happens, you lose your job, you have a medical crisis, whatever, you have 4 weeks to figure it out before panic sets in. Now look, 1 month isn't enough to feel fully secure. We all know that. But it's enough to think clearly. It's enough to make good decisions instead of desperate ones. Here's a real example. You get laid off. Without savings, you're immediately in crisis mode. You take the first job offer you get, even if it's a pay cut, even if it's not a good fit, because you need money now. With 1 month saved, you can be strategic. You can negotiate. You can hold out for something that actually moves your career forward instead of just paying bills. And here's the dirty secret about job hunting. Desperation shows. Hiring managers can smell it. The person who needs the job always has less leverage than the person who's financially stable enough to walk away. Stage 5. 3 months of expenses. $12,000, $18,000. Okay, now we're talking real security. 3 months of expenses is the minimum threshold, where most financial experts say you can handle the majority of life's emergencies without completely derailing your finances. Job loss? You've got a quarter of a year to find something good. Medical emergency? You can focus on getting better instead of how you'll pay for it. Major home repair? Covered. But here's what most people don't realize about getting to this stage. By the time you're here, You're a completely different person with money than you were when you started. Think about it. The version of you that had $0 saved and felt anxious every time you checked your bank account, that person probably couldn't imagine saving $15,000. It seemed impossible. It seemed like something other people do. But you didn't try to save to $15,000. You saved $500. Then you saved another $1,000. Then another $1,500. And each time, you proved to yourself that you could do it. This is the power of stages. You don't become a person who can save $15,000. You become a person who saves $500 5 times, and one day you look up and you've got $15,000. Here's the thing that frustrates me about traditional emergency fund advice. Everyone focuses on job loss. Save 6 months in case you lose your job. But you know what the real emergency is for most people? It's not losing your job. It's never having the breathing room to improve your situation. The real emergency is being stuck in a job you hate because you can't afford to leave. The real emergency is having a brilliant business idea, but no runway to try it. The real emergency is watching opportunities pass by because you're too financially fragile to take any risk. According to the Pew Research Center, about 44% of Americans have considered starting a business, but fewer than 10% actually do it. Why? The number one reason is financial insecurity. They can't afford to fail. An emergency fund doesn't just protect you from bad things happening, it gives you the freedom to make good things happen. Stage 6. 6 months and beyond. $24,000, 36,000 PN. This is the dream, right? 6 months of expenses. Full financial security. You could lose your job tomorrow, and you'd have half a year to figure out your next move without panic. But here's what's wild. By the time you get here, the emergency fund almost isn't even the point anymore. Because someone who can save 6 months of expenses, that person has fundamentally changed their relationship with money. You're not someone who sometimes saves when there's extra money. You're a saver who sometimes spends. That's a completely different identity. And from this foundation, everything else becomes possible. Investing, buying a home, starting a business, retirement. All of it starts from this base of, I have enough saved that I can afford to think long term. Okay, so let's talk about how to actually do this. Because motivation is great, but tactics win games. Step 1. Open a separate savings account. Not a checking account. Not your main account. A separate high-yield savings account that you don't touch except for actual emergencies. As of late 2024, you should be getting at least 4 to 5% interest on this. If your bank offers 0.01%, you're getting robbed. Move it. Step 2. Automate everything. Do not rely on willpower. Willpower fails. Set up an automatic transfer for the day after your paycheck hits. Even if it's just $25. Even if it's just $50. Automatic. Every single time. Step 3. Define what an emergency is. A flat tire? Emergency. Concert tickets? Not an emergency. Broken phone that you need for work? Emergency. Wanting the new iPhone because it's cool? Not an emergency. Write this down. Be specific. Because in the moment, everything feels like an emergency. Step 4. When you use it, rebuild immediately. The fund is not extra money you had saved. It's a tool. When you use a tool, you maintain it. If you drain $800 from your emergency fund, your new priority is getting that $800 back before you do anything else optional. Step 5. Celebrate the milestones. Hit $500? That's worth celebrating. Got to $1,500? Take yourself out for a reasonable dinner. hit $3,000, you just completely changed your financial trajectory. Acknowledge that. Here's a realistic timeline. Let's say you can save $200 a month. Month 3, $500 buffer complete. Month 8, $1,500 foundation complete. Month 15, $3,000 confidence builder complete. Month 24, 1 month of expenses saved, assuming $5,000. Month 60 to 75, 3 to 6 months saved. Yeah, it takes time. Maybe 5 years to get to full 6 months of expenses. But here's the question. Where will you be in 5 years anyway? You're going to be 5 years older regardless. The only question is whether you'll be 5 years older with $30,000 saved, or 5 years older still living paycheck to paycheck. Look, I'm going to be real with you. Building an emergency fund isn't sexy. It's not exciting. You're not going to get rich from your emergency fund. It's just going to sit there, earning 4 to 5% interest, being boring. And that's exactly the point. The emergency fund isn't about getting rich. It's about not being poor. It's about breaking the cycle where one bad day financially ruins your whole month. It's about stopping the bleeding so you can actually start healing. Here's what nobody tells you. You cannot build wealth while you're in survival mode. You just can't. Every financial decision you make from a place of desperation is going to be suboptimal at best and destructive at worst. The emergency fund moves you out of survival mode. That's it. That's the whole point. And from there, everything else becomes possible. So here's what I want you to do. Before you click away from this video, I want you to open your banking app. Right now, look at your checking account balance. If it's less than $500, your stage 1 goal is $500. If you've got more than that, figure out which stage you're at and set your next target. Then, and this is the important part, set up an automatic transfer for next payday. Even if it's $25, even if it's $10, something. Automatic. Today. Because here's the thing. You already know you should save money. Everyone knows that. Knowledge isn't your problem. Action is your problem. And the only difference between someone with an emergency fund and someone without one is that one of them started. That's it. They weren't smarter. They weren't more disciplined. They didn't have some special advantage. They just started and they kept going. 5 years from now, you're going to wish you started today. So start today. If this helped you, if you're actually going to do this, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what stage you're starting at. And subscribe because we're going to talk about what comes after the emergency fund. Investing, buying a home, all of it. But it all starts here. You got this. Now go do it.